Pine Hollow, Wyoming, September 14th, 1983. The air smelled of rust and cut hay as the sun burned low over the horizon. Down a dirt stretch called Miller's Crossing, a pickup rattled to a stop, dust rolling over its hood like tired breath. Before we start the story, tell us, where in the world are you watching this from? And if you enjoy our stories, please consider subscribing to our channel. It'll help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers and keep sharing more inspiring content with you. From the driver's seat, a woman stepped out, no more than 30, hair tangled, face streaked with grit and tears. Her name was Laura McCready, and in the bed of her truck lay the shrouded shape of a man beneath an old quilt. The last light caught the edge of his boot, scuffed, cracked, and still. Laura's voice broke the quiet. "Please, somebody help me," she whispered, though no one was near enough to hear. In the distance, the sound came, not thunder, but the growl of engines rolling slow, steady, and sure. A line of bikes crested the ridge, sunlight flashing across chrome. 12 men in leather vests, the Iron Nomads, MC. Their leader, Harlan Crow Bishop, raised a hand, signaling the pack to slow. Dust curled around them like ghosts. Crow's gaze locked on the woman by the truck. Something in her posture, desperate but unbroken, made him stop. Crow cut his engine, boots crunching the gravel as he approached. "Ma'am," he said, voice gravel and whiskey, "you lost?" Laura shook her head, clutching the truck door like it was the last thing holding her to earth. "Not lost," she said softly. "Just don't know where to go." The other riders parked in formation, their vests marked with the silver skull and wing emblem the town called Trouble. Crow followed her eyes toward the quilt-covered shape. "He yours?" he asked gently. Laura nodded. "My husband, Daniel. Heart gave out last night." Crow removed his sunglasses, eyes pale blue and worn thin by the road. "Sorry to hear." She swallowed hard. "The county won't take him till Monday. They say they're backed up." Her voice cracked. "He's lying there, and I can't leave him like that." Crow looked down at his boots, then at her, this small, trembling woman standing guard over the man she loved. "What exactly do you need from us, ma'am?" Laura met his gaze and said the words that would start the story folks would tell for years. "Please help me bury my husband." For a long moment no one spoke. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of pine and gasoline. Crow exhaled slow, then turned to his men. "Nomads, we got work." The one called Reaper, tall and silent, scratched his beard. "We grave diggers now, boss?" Crow's stare silenced the smirk. "We help her," he said simply. Laura blinked, unsure if she'd heard right. "You'd do that?" "For me," Crow shrugged. "Aight for you. It's for him. Every man deserves the ground, not a waiting line." She covered her mouth, shaking. "Thank you." Reaper and another rider named Fox climbed into the back of the truck, lifting the body with a care that seemed foreign, coming from men with bruised knuckles and scarred hands. They wrapped Daniel in the quilt tighter, almost respectfully. Crow turned to Laura. "You got a place picked?" She nodded faintly. "Up near Willow Ridge. He always said he wanted to rest by the cottonwoods." Crow motioned to the others. "Then that's where we're riding." 12 bikes started up again, their sound echoing down the valley like a hymn for the lost. The convoy rolled through Pine Hollow, slow, respectful. Locals stepped out onto porches, watching the unlikely procession, a battered pickup followed by a dozen leather-clad riders. Old men at the gas station muttered, "Nomads, again." Kids pointed at the skull patches gleaming in the afternoon light. Laura kept both hands tight on the wheel, heart pounding not from fear, but disbelief. Behind her, Crow rode close, his headlights steady on her bumper. When they reached Willow Ridge, the land opened wide, a slope of golden grass beneath cottonwood trees bending in the wind. Laura parked, engine ticking quiet. The riders dismounted wordless. Crow grabbed a shovel from his saddlebag. "We'll do it here," he said. She tried to protest. "You don't have to." But he cut her off. "Lady, we ain't the type to ride away from a job half done." The men fanned out, digging in rhythm, metal biting earth, sweat mixing with dust. The sun dropped low, painting everything in gold and blood. Laura knelt nearby, hands folded, whispering the prayers she remembered from childhood. The sound of shovels was the only reply. Steady, solemn, and human. By dusk, the grave was done. Crow and Reaper lifted Daniel's body from the truck, setting him down with the same quiet reverence a soldier might give a fallen comrade. Laura placed a folded letter against his chest. "He used to fix bikes," she murmured. "Said he'd ride again one day." Crow removed his glove, pressed 2 fingers to the brim of his vest in salute. "Then he ain't far from the road." The nomads stood in a rough semicircle as Laura whispered her goodbyes. When the first stars began to show, Crow handed her the shovel. "It's tradition," he said. "Family closes it." She took it trembling and covered the first bit of earth. One of the men began to hum, low, deep, a tune from nowhere and everywhere. Soon the others joined in, their voices blending with the wind. When it was done, Laura stepped back, eyes shining through the tears. "I don't know how to thank you." Crow looked toward the ridge where the road curved away. "Don't need to," he said. "Just remember, not all men in leather are devils." She smiled weakly. "I already know that now." And under the quiet Wyoming night, the iron nomads mounted their bikes once more, engines rumbling like a promise carved into the dark. The next morning, Pine Hollow woke to talk. The postmaster said he saw the nomads digging in the ridge till midnight. The clerk at the feed store swore she heard them humming church songs. By sunrise, everyone in town had a version. Some said the bikers buried gold, others claimed a gang killing. But at Miller's Diner, where gossip carried faster than coffee, Laura sat alone at a corner booth, hands wrapped around a chipped mug. She hadn't slept. Every sound still echoed the rumble of engines fading into the dark. When the door creaked open, the town sheriff, Bill Ransom, stepped in, heavy-set and skeptical. "Heard you had company last night," he said, sliding into the seat opposite. "Those nomads don't usually play gravedigger." Laura met his gaze, steady. "They did right by my husband," Ransom grunted. "Maybe, or maybe they're hiding something out there." She leaned forward, voice quiet but firm. "You didn't show up when I asked for help, Sheriff." "They did." His jaw tightened. For the first time, Pine Hollow saw a woman who wasn't asking for pity, only fairness. 3 miles outside town, the iron nomads regrouped at an abandoned gas station the locals called the Spill. Sunlight spilled through the cracked roof, painting their bikes in streaks of copper. Crow stood over a rusted map table, while Reaper poured 2 fingers of whiskey into tin cups. "You did good," Fox said, lighting a cigarette. "Word's spreadin'. People finally see we ain't all outlaws." Crow didn't smile. "People see what they want. They'll twist it till it fits their story." He looked toward the highway that cut through the valley, where dust swirled in the morning heat. "Still that woman. She reminded me of Nora." The table went silent. Everyone knew Nora, Crow's late wife, buried in a forgotten plot outside Cheyenne after a drunk driver took her. "Maybe helping her was our penance," Reaper said softly. Crow downed the whiskey and nodded. "Penance or not, it was right." He turned to the men. "No more fights for a while. We keep the road clean, stay out of trouble. Let the wind tell the story." By afternoon, word had reached the local paper. The Hollow Ledger, a weekly sheet run by Maggie Trent, printed the story under the headline, "Bikers dig a grave, leave a town speechless." Maggie found Laura at the feed store, arms deep in grain bags. "I need your words," she said. Laura hesitated. "I don't want attention." Maggie's voice softened. "It's not about attention. It's about truth. Laura looked down at her hands, raw, cracked soil still under the nails. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask for anything. They just showed up when no one else would. Maggie scribbled fast, eyes bright. You realize this will make people rethink them? Laura shrugged. Maybe it should. When the story hit porches that Friday, Pine Hollow paused. Men who'd spit when bikers passed by found themselves quiet at gas pumps. Women who'd crossed the street pulled their children closer, not out of fear, but shame. By evening, every copy was gone. And somewhere outside town, the nomads rode on, unaware that their act of mercy had just set something in motion bigger than themselves. 2 days later, a beat-up Ford rolled up to the spill. A teenage boy climbed out, clutching a folded newspaper. His name was Eli Fenton, 16, denim jacket, fear behind his eyes. You the nomads? He asked. Reaper leaned on his bike, grinning. Depends who's asking. Eli held up the paper, the headline trembling in his hands. My dad served with a guy named Daniel McCready. Same man you buried. Said he once rode with you, back when the club was smaller. Crow stepped forward, frowning. Dan McCready. Rode with us? Eli nodded. Before he got married. Said you saved him outside Tucson once. Crow's eyes darkened with memory. That was a lifetime ago. Eli swallowed. He told my dad you were the only good men he ever met on 2 wheels. For the first time in years, Crow didn't know what to say. He looked out toward the ridge in the distance, voice low. Guess we finally returned the favor. Eli's voice cracked. He'd be proud. The boy left the paper behind, its ink smudged by oil-stained fingers. The story already spreading down every road that knew the sound of freedom. By week's end, strangers began arriving in Pine Hollow. Riders from nearby counties, Vietnam vets, mechanics, widows, all drawn by something they couldn't quite name. They parked by the cottonwoods at Willow Ridge, leaving flowers, helmets, and small wooden crosses beside Daniel McCready's grave. Laura stood there every afternoon, talking quietly to the ones who came. Some cried, some just touched the quilted mound and left. One woman pressed a patch onto the grave. Iron Nomads MC, honor rides. Word traveled through CB radios and bar rooms. A radio DJ in Casper told the tale on air, tough men with tougher hearts. By the time Crow and his men rolled back through town, the ridge had turned into a shrine. Wolf whistles from locals turned into nods of respect. A kid at the gas station handed Crow a folded note from Laura. Inside were 6 words in shaky handwriting. He rode his last road free. Crow stared at the message, then folded it into his vest pocket. Mount up, he said quietly. We got more ghosts to bury. The engines roared again. Rolling into the sunset, 12 silhouettes bound by a single act that had already become legend. 2 weeks after the burial, the Iron Nomads found themselves on every lip between Cheyenne and Billings. Truckers swapped the tale over CB radios. Preachers mentioned it from pulpits with half disbelief, half awe. Even local newsmen, hungry for stories about good men in bad jackets, came searching for the gravedigger bikers. But for Crow, the noise meant nothing. Let 'em talk, he muttered, tightening a bolt on his Harley outside the spill. Reaper tossed him a newspaper. They called us heroes. Crow wiped grease on his jeans. Heroes die young. We just helped a woman bury her dead. Fox grinned. Still, never thought I'd see our name in print without the word arrested next to it. The laughter that followed was brief. From across the road, a state trooper car pulled in, kicking dust. A tall man in mirrored shades stepped out, his badge catching sunlight. Crow Bishop, he said flatly. We need to talk. The laughter died. Reaper's hand twitched toward his pocket knife. Relax, the trooper said. Ain't here for a fight, just a question. About a man named Daniel McCready. The trooper's name was Walt Kramer, built like the mountains he patrolled. He leaned against Crow's bike, flipping through a worn folder. "McCready's widow filed the death certificate last week," he said. "But something don't line up. The man's fingerprints were tied to a warehouse fire down near Salt Lake, one with missing weapons from the National Guard depot." The nomads stiffened. "You saying he was dirty?" Reaper asked. Walt looked up. "I'm saying the Army's still missing 2 crates of rifles, and McCready's name is on a witness list that never made trial." Crow's jaw worked. "He rode with us once, years back. Saved my hide in Tucson. Whatever he did after, we didn't know." Walt nodded. "I figured. But you see my problem, right? Someone out there still looking for those guns. And now you boys are local saints. That kind of story draws eyes, and not all of them friendly." He closed the folder, tone softening. "You did a good thing, Bishop. Don't let it get you killed." The cruiser rolled away, leaving silence behind. Crow exhaled slow. "Seems the dead man left us more than a grave." That night, Crow gathered his men in the old gas station's back room. The air buzzed with tension. Reaper leaned over the table, tapping a cigarette on the wood. "You think Laura knows?" Crow shook his head. "She buried a husband, not a suspect," Fox snorted. "Still, if word gets out, folks'll turn on us again." "Let 'em," Crow replied. "Truth don't change what we did," but his voice betrayed uncertainty. Across the table, Diesel spoke up for the first time. "Boss, you told us to stay out of trouble. But if McCready was tied to stolen rifles, trouble's already found us." Crow rubbed his temples. "Then we handle it quiet. Find where those guns went before someone pins 'em on us." Reaper cracked a grin. "That old Bishop instinct. Chase the storm instead of dodging it." Crow looked up, eyes hard. "If a storm's coming, might as well meet it halfway." Outside, the wind rattled a loose sign against the wall. It read, "Gas for the living, no credit for the dead." Fitting, Crow thought grimly, because ghosts had a way of leaving bills unpaid. Meanwhile, Laura stood alone at Willow Ridge, autumn leaves swirling around Daniel's grave. She'd heard whispers that her husband's past wasn't clean, that his death wasn't simple. But the woman who'd buried him with her own hands refused to let gossip rewrite her truth. "Whatever you did," she whispered to the earth, "you came home honest." She didn't notice the black sedan parked far down the slope, 2 men inside watching. "That's her," one said. "The widow," the other nodded, lighting a cigarette. "Crow Bishop's boys did the burying, right? That means they know where the goods are." They drove off, dust rising behind them. Back in town, Maggie Trent caught Laura by the arm outside the post office. "You need to be careful," she said. "2 strangers asking around about your husband. Said they're from the Army." Laura froze. "The Army?" Maggie nodded. "They don't look like soldiers to me." Laura's pulse quickened. She looked toward the horizon, toward the road she knew the nomads traveled. Maybe, she thought, her husband hadn't finished his story, and maybe those men in leather weren't done writing theirs either. By dawn, the nomads were already rolling. Dust followed them like memory down the canyon road toward an abandoned rail yard Crow remembered from old runs. If McCready hid anything, he said over the roar, it'd be near steel and rust. The yard was a graveyard of boxcars, sunburned and hollow. Reaper and Fox split off, checking each with flashlights. "Empty," Reaper called. But near the back, beneath a derailed caboose, Fox found it, a buried ammo crate, military issue, stenciled letters, half-faded, U.S. property. Crow pried it open. Inside, instead of rifles, were envelopes, photographs, receipts, names, evidence. McCready hadn't stolen the guns. He'd been gathering proof against those who did. Crow stared at the papers, realizing what that meant. "He wasn't the thief," he said quietly. "He was the whistle." Reaper frowned. "Then who burned the warehouse?" Crow's voice dropped. "Whoever's still looking for him." He looked east toward Pine Hollow. And now they're looking for her. He kicked his bike alive, gravel spitting. "Mount up, boys. We ain't done digging." The engines thundered back to life, not for revenge this time, but for protection. Crow's convoy tore down the highway toward Pine Hollow, the late afternoon light throwing long shadows over their chrome. Laura's farmhouse sat quiet on the ridge, curtains drawn tight, the old windmill groaning in rhythm with the approaching engines. When they reached the gate, Crow killed his motor first. "No tracks," he said, crouching to trace the dust. Then he saw it, a cigarette butt still warm, bootprints too clean for ranchers. Reaper muttered, "They've been here." Crow motioned the men into formation, 2 around back, 2 to the shed. He moved to the porch and knocked once. Laura opened the door halfway, eyes wide. "They came," she whispered. "Said they were from the army. I didn't believe them." Crow stepped inside, scanning corners. "You were right not to." He glanced at Daniel's photo on the mantel, smiling, young, unaware how far his secrets would travel. "You got somewhere safe to go?" She shook her head. "Then we make this safe." Outside, the nomads spread out, silent as ghosts taking posts for a final stand. Dusk settled like ash. 2 cars rolled up the dirt road, headlights off, engines low. Crow watched through the window, hand resting on the revolver tucked behind his belt. "Positions," he murmured. Fox and Reaper moved along the side wall, rifles angled down. The car stopped 20 yards out. 4 men stepped into view, dressed in black jackets and false confidence. Their leader, clean-cut and pale, called out, "We're just here for what McCready took." Crow stepped onto the porch. "You got the wrong house, friend." The man smiled thin. "Funny? I heard his old lady's got the evidence." Crow's jaw flexed. "You boys sure you want to do this on a Sunday?" The man laughed. "We don't keep holy days." He raised his hand. The first shot cracked the stillness. Crow dove sideways, splinters raining down. Reaper answered with a burst that ripped through a headlight, blinding the attackers. Engines flared alive. The yard erupted in smoke, bullets, and the smell of oil and pine. Somewhere behind him, Laura prayed aloud, voice shaking but strong. The nomads didn't run. They rode the storm they'd tried to avoid. When the dust cleared, 1 car lay smoking, tires shredded. 2 of the attackers fled into the tree line, their footsteps fading into the hills. Crow limped from cover, blood striping his sleeve. "Everyone breathing?" he shouted. "Still ugly but alive," Fox coughed. Reaper checked the bodies. Government plates, scrubbed clean. Crow knelt beside the ringleader, still barely conscious. "Who sent you?" The man grinned through broken teeth. "You'll find out." "You buried the wrong man." Crow's fist tightened, then eased. "No," he said quietly, "we buried the right one." He turned to Laura. "You hurt." She shook her head, but tears welled. "Why won't they leave him alone?" Crow holstered his gun. "Because truth scares men who live on lies." He kicked a shell casing into the dirt. "We end this tonight." The nomads loaded the unconscious attacker into a pickup, tying him to the rail. "We'll make him talk," Reaper said. Crow looked back at the house, glowing faintly in the dark. "You stay here," he told Laura. "Lock the doors. When you hear the road quiet again, that means it's over." They dragged answers out of the man before sunrise. A warehouse manager, a colonel's cousin, a ledger full of fake invoices. The stolen weapons ring ran deep, and Daniel McCready had uncovered it before his heart gave out. "He tried to warn somebody," Crow said, scanning the scribbled confession they'd forced from the man. "Guess that somebody's us now." Reaper cracked his knuckles. "So what's the move?" Crow stood, eyes hard. "We deliver this to Sheriff Ransom before the feds twist it. Make it public." At dawn, they rolled back into town, the sky bleeding orange. The sheriff met them on Main Street, hand on his holster. "Heard shooting up by the ridge," he said. Crow handed him the folded pages. "You're missing rifles." Your dead man's truth, Ransom read, lips tightening. You realize what this means? Crow nodded. Means Pine Hollow ain't got to whisper anymore? The sheriff looked up, respect softening his tone. You boys just bought yourselves a clean record, Crow smirked. Keep the paper. We'll keep the road. The nomads rode off before gratitude could catch up. Weeks later, the grave at Willow Ridge bloomed with wildflowers. Folks said they planted themselves. Others swore the nomads came back at night. Laura stood there one last time, wind lifting her hair, sunlight breaking through the cottonwoods. Beside the headstone lay a single biker's patch stitched in silver thread. Iron Nomads MC, Honor Rides. She smiled through quiet tears. Down the hill, engines rumbled faintly, fading toward the open plains. At the diner, Maggie Trent's new front page read The Men Who Buried the Truth. No photos, just words that carried from town to town, across state lines, passed by truckers, waitresses, and riders who understood. Crow and his crew became myth long before television caught up. A story retold at bonfires and rest stops about hard men who did one gentle thing and changed how a town remembered leather forever. Somewhere west of Cheyenne, Crow looked out over the road, whispering to the wind, "Ride easy, Dan. The world finally knows." Then he throttled forward, dust rising behind him like a closing curtain on an old Western no one would ever forget. If this ride stirred something in you, if you believe that strength can still be kind and loyalty can still outlive death, then stay on the road with us. Subscribe, like, and ring that bell. The next story's already waiting at the edge of the horizon.